Residents of a neighbourhood in Nottinghamshire have said that they're scared to leave their homes due to an influx of sex workers in the area. People in Hyson Green have even complained prostitutes have sex up against their homes. So could this problem be a symptom of prostitution being forced underground or indeed up against the home? While the practice is legal, many of the practices around soliciting sex for money or managing a brothel are prohibited by law. Joining me now is a former sex worker and founder of the Retrieve charity, which helps those struggling from addiction. It's Natasha Wyer. Natasha, thank you very, very much. What do you make of this? Because it's not the only area in the UK that has previously had quite a large amount of sex workers in it. They've tried various different things in different areas, haven't they, including essentially legalising it all. Just talk to me a bit about what you make of this situation in Nottingham.
OK, well, for myself, I live in Holbeck in Leeds. And as you'll know, that was a zone that was legalised for a number of years and then was closed down last year. So what do I make of it? It's a very complex situation. Now, myself being a former sex worker and now, you know, working with the women, but also living as a resident in Holbeck, I do sympathise with the residents of Nottingham. So I can see both sides. It's not an easy situation, you know.
I suppose one could argue that actually if there wasn't the demand for it, then there wouldn't be the service as well. So maybe we should be looking at the type of individual who decides to go and utilise the services of a sex worker. But I suppose there's another side of it as well, isn't there, which is that presumably a lot of people who work in the sex industry maybe are doing it to help fund certain addictions, for example. So do you want to talk to me a bit about that as well? How can we combat that?
Well, that was my issue. You know, I didn't just wake up and think, oh, you know, I want to go and do this. This is what I want to do. Unfortunately, I battled a 15-year crack and alcohol addiction, which then led me down the path of feeding my habit through prostitution. And that's what most of these ladies are doing. They have a physical and mental addiction. They are battling mental health. And they are the most vulnerable women that there are, you know, especially out on the streets and street working. And it's the hardest thing ever, because I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for these ladies in question. But let me tell you, it's not something you want to do. You are addicted and you will do anything you can to feed that addiction, which unfortunately for women is to sell their bodies.
I suppose for some of these residents who are complaining, and let's be honest, it mustn't be nice, especially if you've got young kids and you open your front door and there's people visibly engaging in sex acts in the middle of the street, which some of these residents say is happening. So there you go. Does that mean that we should maybe make it easier to do in a private setting? If it's going to happen anyway, and it is going to happen anyway, should there be certain locations maybe where the police allow it to happen? I mean, look, let's be honest, we've managed to utilise hotels for other things in this country recently and found the space there. Maybe we should do it for sex workers as well.
Now, to be honest with you, like I say, I can't condone the girls' actions. You know, it's not nice. I live in Holbeck. I have children, you know, and the residents and myself, it's hard. You know, our children are seeing this and they're seeing the women on the street corners and they are seeing, you know, the paraphernalia that they leave about. It's not nice. And no resident should have to see that, and no children, because I believe what's happening is we're having to explain to our children what this is and what that is before their time. You know, however, how do we deal with this? Well, we did try to legalise the zone in Holbeck in Leeds, and it didn't work. It failed miserably, because what it did is it lured a lot of predators in, and young girls were being approached, and it was horrific, if I'm honest. It was not the option. So how do we deal with this? As you said, it is going to continue, but we need to look at a broader plan. You know, the women, they need to want to get clean too. They're going to want to have to change this lifestyle, which isn't always easy when you have a heroin addiction or a crack addiction and you've been doing it for 15, 20 years. But you are correct. And I think teamwork, community coming together, counsellors, police, how are we going to look at this? How are we going to work together to get these women? But again, like you touched on, which I'm really glad you touched on, is that if, you know, there wasn't demand, these men are coming into these women in their right minds. The women are not in their right minds.
Yeah, no, this is it. I mean, we can't get around that. I mean, I think people, assume, all right, OK, whatever's going on in these women's lives, as you've rightly said, I would imagine there's very, very few women who wake up one day and decide they actively want to do this for the enjoyment and the love of it, right? So, they've got whatever they've got going on, but there are blokes there who just actively enjoy this service, and they are potentially the ones to blame, are they? I mean, is this something we have to look at, actually? What's going on for the men involved here?
Well, exactly. I'm not being funny, but, the men that come down here into Holbeck with the women that I work with, let me tell you, they're coming in nice cars, from work, big positions, car seats in the back of their car. They are married, but they come to these women because these women will do what their wives won't. And these women are vulnerable. They know they need their drugs. They'll be sick without the heroin, because heroin is a physical addiction, crack is a mental addiction, and the men know this. So I think as well, certain men need help. They've got an addiction to sex.